In the heart of the serene neighborhood of Willow Creek, everything looked perfect. Rows of identical houses, manicured lawns, and white picket fences gave the impression of an ideal suburban paradise. To outsiders, the HOA seemed like a harmless organization, concerned only with aesthetics. But when the HOA introduced its new, perfection policy, even the slightest deviation, a crooked hedge, faded paint, or an unkempt lawn, would trigger an official notice. Residents chuckled at first, thinking it was just another overbearing regulation. Yet Sarah, a young mother who had recently moved in, noticed the subtle changes almost immediately. It began with small, unsettling incidents. One morning, Sarah woke up to find her calendar erased. Important dates, appointments, even her daughter's birthday, gone. Her husband brushed it off, claiming he had no memory of the week before, but Sarah remembered everything vividly. She checked the neighborhood, and to her growing horror, she realized that her neighbors, too, were forgetting crucial details of their lives. A neighbor who had hosted a barbecue yesterday insisted it had never happened. Another who had painted his garage a bold red last week claimed it had always been white. At first, Sarah suspected a prank or mass forgetfulness. But soon, the phenomenon became terrifyingly clear: time itself was being stolen. Each infraction of the HOA's seemingly trivial rules accelerated the disappearance of memories, as if reality itself were bending to enforce perfection. She watched in disbelief as her own reflection in the mirror flickered. Her face appeared younger, then older, as if days, weeks, and months were dissolving in the blink of an eye. The silence of the streets became oppressive. Where once children played and neighbors chatted, now only the hum of distant traffic and the occasional creak of a swing filled the air. People moved about mechanically, eyes vacant, smiles forced. Sarah's best friend, Tom, had always been meticulous about his lawn, yet even he had started noticing gaps in his memory. He could not recall what he had for breakfast, or even whether he had attended a meeting he distinctly remembered planning. Conversations repeated themselves, like a loop, as if time itself had fractured. Sarah's anxiety turned into obsession. She began keeping a journal, meticulously documenting every small event, hoping to preserve some semblance of continuity. Yet each night she slept, the journal would show gaps, pages smudged, events rewritten as if by an invisible hand. And then there were the shadows, vague figures that flickered across the periphery of her vision, moving just beyond recognition. Whenever she turned to confront them, they vanished, leaving only the faint echo of a whisper: perfection is control. Perfection is obedience. Sarah started noticing a strange pattern. The more she resisted the HOA's rigid rules, the more severe the distortions became. Forgetting escalated to missing hours, entire days swallowed by some unseen force. A simple missed lawn trim or late mailbox decoration led to a creeping sense of unreality. She wasn't alone in this realization. Quietly, a few neighbors began comparing notes, their fragmented memories revealing a horrifying truth. The HOA wasn't just enforcing aesthetics, it was controlling reality, bending time itself to maintain order. By the third week, the neighborhood had descended into eerie chaos. Streets that had once been filled with laughter and the hum of life were now unnervingly still. Sarah's own home had become a disorienting trap of flickering clocks, shifting shadows, and distorted sounds. Even the sunlight seemed hesitant, casting strange, uneven patterns that changed every hour. She noticed her watch ticking backward some mornings, as if mocking her very attempts to track time. Neighbors whispered of disappearing hours and blank days. Children forgot their own names, spouses no longer recognized each other, and long-standing friendships crumbled under the weight of fractured memories. Sarah and a handful of determined residents formed a silent alliance. They began documenting every detail they could, trying to create a map of stolen time. Yet the more they recorded, the more the neighborhood seemed to resist their efforts. Notes vanished, clocks stopped or ran in reverse, and every attempt to recall the previous day felt like swimming against an invisible current. One night, driven by desperation, Sarah ventured past her property line and approached the HOA office. The building, usually pristine and orderly, now radiated a strange, unnatural energy. Windows reflected scenes from her lost memories, brief flashes of birthdays, meetings, and conversations that had already vanished from her mind. Inside, she found files and ledgers, detailing not only property violations but the specific, time penalties, assigned to each resident. The documents suggested a horrifying truth. The wall wasn't merely an organization, it was a guardian of time itself, punishing imperfection by erasing reality. As she leafed through the records, shadows coalesced along the walls, whispering in cold, hollow voices. Sarah realized that the very essence of the neighborhood was alive, feeding on compliance, absorbing mistakes, and punishing dissent. The residents weren't simply forgetful, they were being absorbed into the HOA's twisted system, their lives slowly rewritten or erased entirely. Sarah returned home, her mind racing. She began forming a plan, understanding that to survive, she had to document, resist, and somehow disrupt the control. Yet even as she strategized, she noticed subtle changes in herself. Hours she had lived felt unfamiliar, her own memories seemed borrowed, and the line between past and present blurred. The perfect neighborhood, once a haven, had become a trap of stolen time, a living entity sustained by fear and obedience. And Sarah understood one chilling truth. Any attempt to ignore or defy the rules would risk losing not just a day or a memory, but her entire existence within Willow Creek. Sarah knew that confronting the HOA was the only way to reclaim the stolen hours and shattered memories, but the neighborhood seemed to resist her very presence. Streets warped subtly as she walked, familiar houses appearing twisted, doors opening to rooms she didn't recognize, and windows reflecting moments she had never lived. She gathered the few neighbors who were still lucid: Tom, an elderly man whose sharp mind had somehow resisted the time erasure, and Lila, a single mother who had kept a journal like Sarah's. Together, they returned to the HOA headquarters, where the building now pulsed with a sinister energy, humming with the accumulated hours of residents trapped in frozen loops. Inside, the chamber of clocks and devices loomed, each instrument ticking with impossible precision, some moving forward, some backward, others frozen entirely. The wall leaders emerged from the shadows, composed and chillingly calm, explaining that their mission was perfection itself. Any imperfection, any lapse in compliance, allowed chaos to seep into the fabric of time, and it was their duty to correct it. Sarah felt a wave of despair as the leaders demonstrated the machine's power, showing her the frozen bubbles where neighbors had vanished, suspended in distorted moments of their own lives. But Sarah refused to submit. With a mixture of courage and desperation, she attacked the central device, smashing its controls and causing an explosion of light and sound that rippled through the building and beyond. The clocks spun wildly, some exploding into dust while others began ticking normally again. Time rushed back to the streets, and some memories returned, though not all. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, punctuated by distorted echoes of vanished days, and the neighborhood, though partially restored, bore the permanent scars of the HOA's cruel manipulation. Residents who had been absent for hours, or even weeks, staggered back, bewildered, some never fully recalling their lost moments. Sarah and her allies realized that while the HOA's grip had been weakened, it was not completely destroyed, leaving a lingering sense of unease. The perfect suburban veneer remained intact, but beneath it, a dark, subtle current of control persisted, a reminder that power unchecked could manipulate even the essence of life itself. In the days following the confrontation, Willow Creek became a neighborhood both familiar and alien. Time seemed more stable, yet shadows of the past lingered. Sarah noticed neighbors glancing at her house warily, whispers spreading of strange occurrences, people missing for hours, and odd discrepancies in their own memories. Some had lost birthdays, anniversaries, or significant moments, and the strain of piecing together reality left scars on their psyches. Sarah dedicated herself to helping residents reclaim lost fragments of their lives, sharing journals, coordinating schedules, and creating a community network to preserve memories. Yet the HOA office, though partially incapacitated, still stood ominous at the center of the neighborhood, its windows dark, its hum faint but persistent. Occasionally, she would catch a flicker in the corner of her eye, a shadow moving with impossible speed, or the ticking of a clock that didn't match the hour. It reminded her that the battle was never truly over. The experience left Sarah with an acute understanding of control and power. She recognized that obsession with perfection and blind obedience could destroy lives, warp reality, and erase existence itself. While Willow Creek appeared peaceful once more, the residents carried a shared, quiet vigilance, a subtle rebellion against arbitrary authority, ensuring they would not let their lives be rewritten again. Sarah finally understood the moral of their ordeal. Freedom, memory, and time are priceless. resisting injustice and maintaining one's own autonomy is the only defense against those who seek to control reality itself. And as she watched the sunset over the manicured lawns, she knew the neighborhood would never be the same, but at least, for now, it belonged to the people, not the unfeeling hand of the HOA.